Call the regular 26, 2023 back to order. Before we move along here, I'd like to acknowledge that this council meeting has been held on the homeland of the Ktunaxa people. First up tonight, we have a little welcome and introduction. We have two special guests this evening as we welcome the 2023 Cranbrook Youth Ambassador Team, Zoe Stennerson and Elizabeth McLeod. I'll just have you sit for a minute because I want a few little accolades here for you before we get going. So they're going to represent the city for the next year. Certainly, I got my eyes opened up this year. I worked the one day that they during their education session on how the city operates, etc. And I spent some time with 8 of these young ladies, and I'm going to tell you, I walked out of that room at the end of the day, and I'm going, I would have sworn, and I've said this numerous times, I did not realize they were grade 10 and 11 students. I would have swore I was in a room with 3rd and 4th year university students. And I mean that sincerely. I just couldn't believe it. The composure, certainly, you know, how you conducted yourselves, incredible. The character, they just showed the character and all 8 of them. And it was interesting. We attended the showcase last Friday. Councillor Lissette, Councillor Stetsky were there. No. Anyways, so, you know, the 8 candidates, I got to tell you, you know, for you two to come out on top, that's unbelievable because everybody there was exceptional. And I mean this so sincerely. At the end of the night, when we were talking to some other people in, you know, that attended, you know, I asked the question, how many people that actually, and the Key City Theater was full. How many people actually sitting there, adults or anything else, could have gone up on stage and even performed at half the level that these young ladies did? I'm honest to God, not one of them said they could have done it. All 8 stood out. So I just want to acknowledge that. And certainly, you know, I look going forward, these young ladies, all 8 are positioned. I really think this program positions them for their future. They're going to be leaders, and you can just see that, you know, that the character was brought out, certainly how they conduct themselves. They've got the potential for future leadership. So again, ladies, congratulations. I mean, for you two to come out on top, and it was a very competitive field there. Congratulations. I talked to you the following night at the banquet, and I'm going to tell you, you guys are going to be lights out representing this community when you're out there. So thank you very much. And we're looking forward to working with you and being a part of it with you in the upcoming year here. So on that, Zoe and Elizabeth, we'll maybe get you up front here if we could. And we will maybe have a picture with council. We'll let Chris Zettel frame us here somehow, how he thinks best. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
We'll be seeing you. Yeah. Okay, going into adoption of agenda. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda of the regular council meeting of Monday, June 26, 2023? Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Popoff. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion to adopt the following minutes? Regular meeting of council of Monday, June 12th, 2023. Committee of the whole meeting of Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. Mover, please. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Peabody, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. First up here, we have a public hearing. This public hearing is being convened pursuant to Section 465 of the Local Government Act to consider, number one, the official community plan amendment bylaw number 4120-2023, and number two, zoning bylaw amendment number 4121-2023. This public hearing is being held electronically with residents and interested parties being given the opportunity to express their views by phone. This meeting is being broadcast live from the city's website, and there's a link on the homepage that will take you directly to the meeting. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws shall be given an opportunity to be heard. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that all who speak at this meeting restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaws, and it is my responsibility as chair of this meeting to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. Members of council may ask questions of you following your presentation. However, the main focus of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public and not to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Those of you who wish to speak concerning the proposed bylaw should, at the appropriate time, begin by clearly stating your name and address, and then give us the benefit of your views. You will be given 5 minutes for your presentation. I will call for presentations 3 times for each bylaw. Once the public hearing is closed, members of council cannot take any further input regarding the proposed bylaws and will then deal with the bylaws during the regular meeting of council held at after the public hearing. First bylaw for consideration tonight is proposed City of Cranbrook official community plan amendment bylaw number 4120-2023. The subject property is located at 28 11th Street South. The proposed OCP amendment would increase the minimum density for the subject property, changing from low density residential to medium density residential. If you are on the phone waiting to speak, callers will be identified by the last 2 digits in their phone number. Or if you have pre-registered, we will call you by name. Please make sure you know which number you are calling from and listen for it to be called. When it is your turn to speak, you will be allowed to unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you will have your opportunity to provide us with your views. If you have not pre-registered and wish to speak, please press *3 on your phone to signal staff that you wish to address council. I will now call for submissions, the first time for submissions.
Mayor Price, we have no pre-registered and nobody's phoned in.
Thank you. I will now call a second time for submissions. Seeing none, I will now call a third and final time for submissions. Hearing no more comments, I now close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook official community plan amendment bylaw number 4120-2023. Next up, the next bylaw for consideration tonight is the proposed City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4121-2023. The subject property is again located at 28 11th Street South. The proposed zoning amendment would increase the minimum density for the subject property, amending the zoning designation from RD, 2-family residential, to R5, medium density, multiple family. I will now call for a first time for submissions.
Mayor Price, we have no pre-registered and nobody's phoned in.
Thank you. I will now call a second time for submissions. I will now call a third and final time for submissions. Having no more comments, I now close the public hearing for the proposed City of Cranbrook zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 4121-2023. Thank you. Moving now into bylaws. The first bylaw for consideration tonight is zoning amendment bylaw number 4118, 2023. This bylaw is coming back for adoption. Can I get a motion that council adopt City of Cranbrook zoning amendment bylaw number 4118, 2023? Mover, please, Councillor Graham, Councillor Ray. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 6.2, next bylaw are the official community plan amendment bylaw 4120, 2023, and zoning bylaw amendment number 4121, 2023. These bylaws are up for a third reading. Can I get a motion that council, can I get a motion that subject to council's consideration of public input received up to and including the public hearing of June 26, 2023, council give third reading to City of Cranbrook official community plan bylaw amendment number 4120, 2023. Mover, please, Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Lissette. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Can I get a motion that subject to council's consideration of public input received up to and including the public hearing of July 26, 2023, council give third reading to City of Cranbrook zoning bylaw amendment number 4121, 2023. Councillor Graham, Councillor Ray, discussion? In favor? Opposed? That's carried. 6.3, next bylaw is camping bylaw number 4123, 2023. This bylaw is coming forward for first, second, and third reading tonight. Can I ask administration to provide a brief overview of the report, please?
In generalities, staff has been researching various options and service models available. We've discussed numerous options on how to deal with people living rough within the community. So I have put forward a model that is based on Vernon and Squamish. And we've come forward with a camping bylaw that basically prohibits camping within city limits unless you can identify yourself as homeless. And then if so, we then have terms for how long and how you can stay within a tent within city limits, right? So there is a part of support, and there's also a level of recognition that we don't want to endorse camping within city limits. And then I think some of the things that should be brought up within this bylaw that I should just point out is it also does refer to RVs. Last winter we had quite a few incidents with RVs. Several went up in flames. RVs are not safe places for prolonged living within, and then also with the amount of cooking and other activities that they were doing within these RVs. The other thing I would point out is the schools. So we have had discussions with the school district, and basically the school district is public land, but it is considered private land, and they have the abilities to charge individuals that are on school land camping with trespassing, which we don't have that opportunity to do. So yeah, we're having discussions with the school district to just clear up that process, and that they know when these incidents happen and when the school district wants to move on encampments that are on school land, what their rights are and the process that they need to follow. And then the other thing I would show is if you all have seen the map that's part of the bylaw, there is 3 parcels of land that I will speak about. As we all know, with this bylaw, we cannot outright ban camping within the city limits, because any court of law will also turn around and ask us, well, where can they camp, right? At some point, we have to be recognize their plight and be supportive as well. So there is what we call parcel lots that these individuals can go camp to. I made reference to them as numbers, but Ross, is there a way you could pull up the map and I can point them out to you? Can you blow it up? Here, I'm just going to walk around. So, okay, so there's one spot right there, right at the tip of Moore Park. So we went and checked it out. Now, us create a checklist of where individuals they would need a clear space. Access to support. So Salvation Army just here. Right, so Salvation Army offers food, counseling, clothing, right? The other spots are basically right by the chamber offices in the side of the chamber, right? And then a little bit further up from the chamber, I also say is accessible and is acceptable for. Well, we're not. Those are three identified areas. We're looking at. So that's the situation. The other thing, you know, that we should talk about is that's the travel lodge right now. This is the proposed shelter right here. So another thing that judges in other cities are asking at other spots is they want the spot to be between 1,500 meters, 2,000 meters, no further than 2,000 from this. So that spot right there, shelter wise. Here we're just a little bit out of range with the present. Right. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. How's this going to work? Oh, is this wireless? Nice. Okay. All right. So hoping I'm answering some of your questions. And this is as thorough of a process as we feel we need to do, which is identifying properly the parks and the protected areas that we wanted to identify, dealing with this camping issue within the city limits. I'll just go back to the desk and wait for questions.
Okay, I've got a motion here. I'll read the motion and then we'll put the questions on the floor. Can I get a motion that council give first reading to camping bylaw number 4123/2023? Mover, please. Councillor Blissett, Councillor Ray. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Peabody, Councillor Popoff.
Thank you. So in some of the earlier deliberations, we talked about trying to make sure that from an environmental perspective, that people are not camping on the creek through town, but those two sites at the Chamber of Commerce, would that not then be on the creek?
Yeah, but there is enough ample field space away from the creek, right? So again, everything that we say, you know, I got the same question about section 4.1A to C. Everything that we say in this bylaw about them camping in the waterways and everything else, that has to be respected, right? So when I pointed out those areas, right, we still will hold them accountable that there will be no camping directly on the waterway. They will be, I think it says 10 meters away, 20 meters, is it? Yeah, 20 meters away from the trail and the waterway, right?
Councillor Stetsky, further.
The other concern I have is that it talks about moving people at 9 o'clock every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there were a number of concerns around whether or not we had the staff capacity to do that. And then secondly, whether that was really an acceptable approach. And I know that does happen in Vernon, for sure. And I think there's at least one other community, but
Mhm.
capacity to actually enforce that bylaw, and is that not a little restrictive? Because initially I thought we talked about continuing past practice where staff would go in every week or so and clean up the garbage and make people move if they needed to, but not every
Yeah.
morning.
So the 9 in the morning till 7 p.m. is from the Adams Johnston case from the BC Court of Appeal. So those timelines have long been established, I think, for 7 years. Now, do we have the staff resources? We do right now. We have hired security guards. We have Marcel. We have another bylaw. We have 2 other bylaw officers and myself. Right now it's a lot. I'll give you that, Councillor Stetsky, and that we do presently have 30 encampments, right? So, but we are with potentially this bylaw being passed, the goal is that we will bring these 30 encampments down to a reasonable number. And at that point, we will have the capacity. But yeah, we're definitely on a steep hill right now, just trying to deal with potentially taking down these tents and allowing them to be set up again at night.
Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. Paul, one of the areas that gets sort of the most amount of complaints from the public is just along Ridgeview Drive on the hill there. How does this bylaw address those complaints? And yeah, I think that's my question. How are we addressing those complaints, and how are we intending to reduce the amount of complaints we are getting in that area?
So through the Mayor Price to Councillor Peabody, I think what I would ask of you, Councillor Peabody, is clarity on those complaints. Like if it's complaints about crime, that's an RCMP question. If it's complaints about the perception of homeless folks in town, I would say, this is a fact of life for every small town in BC and larger centers, of course. If it's complaints about them not having a proper place to be, that's more focused to BC Housing, I feel, and the other support services that are within the community. So I always wonder what the complaints are. Our one complaint that we truly deal with from a bylaw standpoint is unsightly premises. So yes, we're on site now 3 times a week with garbage crews, cleaning up that site. We literally haul away a trailer, the length of this room, and just remove all the stuff that they're gathering on a daily basis. So we're dealing with that complaint, right? And as we've heard from other communities, you've all been at UBCM conventions and what have you. The key to all of this is perseverance and also just doing it on a daily basis, right? So, we're seeing 30 tents, but we saw 5 tents be moved even today, right? So, they're chosen to just go elsewhere or to better accommodations. All of a sudden they're realizing that being in a tent is not the best advantage, right? And I think by Wednesday, with this perseverance and due diligence, we're going to see 4 more tents that people are going to just move out. And then, of course, Marcel's here. As far as I know, the Travelodge still has 8 rooms available for people to check in at 4 o'clock and stay for the night, right? So, and we have other initiatives in the go, which Marcel should also speak to.
Thank you, Councillor Papa.
Yes, thank you. Excuse me. So we've had some other conversations at council prior to this. Now we're seeing the bylaw coming forward on this. Paul, you were showing a couple suggested locations around Cranbrook where the folks might go for some temporary, quote, camping. But what we learned earlier is this does not mean that this is a city approved encampment. This is something different. So it's not an encampment. It's not city approved, city sanctioned. It's just somewhere where you can be temporarily. That's correct?
Yeah,
Excellent.
that's right.
Thank you.
So,
And the other thing is I looked at the bylaw proposal and it talks about camping. From time to time, the city hosts sports events and festivals where we allow dry camping up at Moyer. If there's Sam Steele or a soccer tournament, or if there's a festival, people can dry camp on public land and city parks. That's out of play with this bylaw. We do allow dry camping up at Moyer or sports enthusiasts that are up there participating in sporting events. So is that in scope with this regulation or out? And you don't have to answer me today.
I would say that definition of that form of camping out of necessity, right? So individuals living rough are camping out of necessity. These individuals that you're talking about, this ad hoc camping by people going to a ball tournament or whatever, I don't think they're identifying as being homeless. So I mean, and by the definition, I would say they're out of scope.
Okay,
That
that's
is-
just wanted to
yes.
clarify that, because we maybe have an unintended consequence here where we can't allow people to dry camp for festivals and sports events. Thanks.
Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just a couple things, and one maybe just to stem off of what Councillor Popoff was saying. Most times, well, I would say every time that we allow dry camping up at Moyer, it's because a group has requested it. It's not like it just people show up there and camp. So it is, we do know that they're coming like with the dog show or with a tournament. So it is a letter that comes to staff. So I think that could easily be addressed and accommodated because it's a permission. The other thing I got a couple questions on is I going through the bylaw, and I think the timelines, the 9 to 7 is great, and it's not like it's enforced every day, but at least we have the teeth. If we want to, we can work with that with the tents. What I was wondering is with the unsightly premise, and that's where bylaw comes into effect. Who's paying for the cleanup? How much does it cost? And like, what happens if I was to phone in on a residence for unsightly and bylaw? Like, how do we get cost recovery from a normal residence? And how are we getting cost recovery from this? Like, who's paying the bill and how much are we spending?
Okay. So I mean, we've identified it within the city system as unrecoverable expenses for the obvious reasons that these folks can't pay tickets, they can't pay fines, nor can they pay for the cleanup costs. So yeah, we do consider it unrecoverable, Councillor Graham. And then, you know, the second part of your question is, it's a bit of a stretch to say that we would go to another person's private property. If it's private property, it's truly their problem, right? If it's another part of the city that a homeless individual has left a whole bunch of garbage at, it remains our problem if it's on City Park or City Boulevard or what have you, right? You know, we've identified key locations, and the routine that we've been taught by other smaller towns is they don't quite like the fact that you're there every day cleaning up around them, right? So it's a measure that we just take to just promote, you know, that we care about the area. And it also gives us a reason to have interactions with them and talk to them as we clean up the area. And we also make it safe. Probably.
I guess just a supplemental is I didn't hear a number on cost.
Oh,
And do we
okay.
pay tipping fees at the transfer station, or are we able just to drive in and dispose of the goods?
Okay, so to give you a general number, and I've just been putting it all together, but the truth is, Councillor Graham, it's about right now $6,500 a week for us to provide security, for us to clean up, for us to have certain staff on site. What's coming out of that is, you know, again, we're having the interactions that are leading to several of these camps leaving the site. We have interior health, we have other members of nonprofit groups now joining us, that they want to be on site and they feel safe on the site now. So there's progress being made there. And yes, you're right, Councillor Graham, is coming at a cost.
And I guess one more, just to bring it full circle, so you know I'm not way off base, because we are talking about a bylaw. And what I'm trying to hone it back into is because we are starting to identify areas and no-go zones, maybe that would help reduce the cost. We're not chasing multiple little, an abandoned tent here or something over by the creek here. That might help with that. So that's kind of how I'm bringing this full circle into this discussion.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So when council passed the motion that led to this bylaw coming forward, we intentionally excluded the requirements that some other communities have had about taking tents down and moving them X number of meters away. So we intentionally excluded that. So just for the benefit of the public, Paul, could you just very briefly kind of speak to that? So we've intentionally included the ability to, set up and take down at the times you have, but we've intentionally excluded the requirement to move X number of meters.
All right, yeah, that's a good point, Councillor Ray. Councillor Ray. So your mayor through to Councillor Ray, Squamish's bylaw and Vernon's initially did say, you could move the camp 50 meters, right? But in previous meetings that was retracted, and that's reflected in this camping bylaw, that when we say move, we're not necessarily moving the camps. All we're doing is asking them to collapse the tent. This camping bylaw also goes into greater detail in that when they collapse the tent, it doesn't mean that they can keep all of their materials inside the tent. As I've spoken with Vernon bylaw, when we say collapse the tent, it's basically to the point where they can fold up the tent and have it ready to, go into dad's station wagon, let's say, right? And then all their personal belongings are going to be put in a 6x6 chalk circle. We've had to think through the process here. 6x6 chalk circle, their personal belongings can go, and then the tent has to be foldable and ready to move, but it will not be moving, right? So there is a certain expectation, right? And we're doing this to prevent the hoarding, and that we can also see the contents of the tent. So we've had numerous issues already with propane tanks, butane tanks. These are causing fires and serious hazards within these tents. If they're asked to bring out the contents, we can then at that point just assess it. And again, we're making some great strides, I should say, too, on bicycle thefts. The number of bikes that are at the back of that berm has dropped drastically with us being there every day. They no longer see the point in collecting bicycles.
Good. Councillor Stetsky.
The other thing that I think we talked about briefly when we discussed it last time was the opportunity for the city to consult a bit with the other groups that are on the ground virtually every day with a lot of the homeless people. And I know you and your team are as well, but have you had the opportunity to discuss this approach with some of those other agencies in the community?
Marcel, do you want to? Yeah, just.
So are you asking if we've discussed the bylaw or just the?
Basically the approach, we're making people move every day. Has that been discussed with anchors and some,
Definitely there's been conversation around it. And again, my understanding of the bylaw is it gives us the ability when we're in those moments where there's encampments are becoming unsafe or unruly, that it gives us that ability, but it's not something that we have to enforce every time we go out. The nonprofits would not be in support of collapsing tents every day.
Okay. So with that being said, every 2 weeks, I'm in a group meeting with Interior Health, and I got majority of the groups, the nonprofit groups in the community, that I have spoken about this bylaw, and I've said, we will be taking a different approach in terms of asking people to take down their tents, right? So the groups that were in attendance in those teams calls, in those teams meetings, did know about it, right? But I mean, that group is constantly changing. So it's very dynamic.
Further questions, Council? All in favor? Opposed? Counselor Stetsky opposed? That is carried. Number 2, can I get a motion that council gives second reading, pardon me, to camping bylaw number 4123, 2023. Mover, please. Councilor Ray, Councilor Popoff. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Stetsky is opposed, and that is carried. Can I get a motion that council give third reading to camping bylaw number 4123, 2023? Mover, please. Councilor Bassett, Councilor Graham. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Councilor Stetsky is opposed. That is carried. Okay. On to new business. The first item is from Corporate Services regarding a letter of support for a situation table grant application. Can I get Corporate Services to provide a brief overview of that report, please?
That would be me. In collaboration with Felicia Parker from the Mental Health Liaison with the RCMP, we're trying to apply for a grant to bring a situation table to Cranbrook. Basically, the situation table is people from all the sectors, all the nonprofits, provincial and federal government services and stuff that are already in Cranbrook to come to the table at the very beginning to decide amongst the team then who is best suited, what organizations are best in place to support the individual that we're talking about. From then, all the other organizations fall away and the people left at the table take an initiative to create the intervention. And the goal behind this is twofold. First, it's to break down the silos that are happening with all the support groups in town. It is to bring collaboration and communication so that we're not duplicating services, so that we're using our dollars and our people the most effectively, and that ultimately for the best outcomes of the individual that we're considering. The second part of this situation table, which is also, I think, really important right now, is to decrease the stresses on all of our emergency services. So if there's somebody who is somebody who emergency or ambulance attends to quite frequently, we're hoping that with early intervention and with concentrated, focused intervention, that we're getting this person the help that they needed right off the bat and into the right resources, which would then hopefully decrease the amount of calls for our emergency services. Our first step in this is making the application and having letters of support from the community, not commitment in those letters, just letters of support saying that, yes, we think this would be a good idea. And then we're hoping to have our application in towards the end of the month, first part of July, to avoid the summer holiday season where everybody, takes off. We have the application completed. We have about 10 letters of support right now, probably another 10 out there. We're just waiting them to come back. And certainly we'd love to have the cities as part of that application package.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Can I get a motion that council approve the release of the draft letter of support for grant application to the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General for $57,000 to establish a situation table in Cranbrook to fund training, technology, community engagement, and miscellaneous expenses related to the situation table operations? Mover, please. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. Discussion. Councillor Ray.
I'm really pleased to see this initiative. I think this is exactly the kind of collaborative, creative, solution-focused action steps that we want to be happening. So thanks to you and to Felicia for bringing this forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you. So as you know, I've said to you before, find us the best practices and then bring it forward to council. This is a best practice that's happening in other communities.
And many, I think there's about 15 across BC right now. 9 were a little more have been around for a little bit, and then there's some new ones. And what they are finding is exactly what we are hoping for, that better collaboration, better communication equals better outcomes and decreased need for emergency services. Right now, I've only been in the role a month, so I'm pretty new at the whole thing, but just getting into the role, it was right off the bat, notice that there's gaps and there's miscommunication. They think that group is taking care of somebody, they think somebody else is care. And so it's just trying to bring that communication right from the very start, so that then the right people are at the right place for the right individual. And the data and the research shows that it increases outcomes for the client, and then they're out of the system.
So Marcel, what happens when everyone points to you?
To do what?
Well, here's a crisis, here's a person that needs care, and they go, it's not our mandates, thanks for bringing it up. And
Well, I'm hoping that the table will do that because it comes together, it goes down through a filtering process. So they come to the table, we talk about what the risks that this individual are experiencing. And then from the table, it's like, okay, who was the people most appointed, most that is their mandate to deal with these specific things. And I think that part of my role is I will be co-chair of the thing and is to help coordinate those services and stuff, but not, it won't be under my mandate to actually go out and solve the problem.
good answer, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Marcel. Certainly, I certainly think it's a very proactive, important first step that you've taken in the first month of your role. So obviously, you were thrown in the deep end of the pool, and you seem to be doing quite well there. So thank you very much. This is really important. So, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The next item is from Finance regarding the 2022 annual report. Can I ask Director Osborne to please provide a little update?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to council. So the 2022 annual report was issued a few weeks ago and made available to the public, and for their review and comment. The report must be presented to council and approved by council by June 30th. And at the time that we wrote this report, there were no comments submitted from the public on the annual report and no questions. It was reviewed 174 times on the website, downloaded 66 times, and one hard copy was picked up here at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Can I get a motion that council receives for information the City of Cranbrook 2022 annual report as presented? Mover. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Bassett. Discussion. All in favor? Great job, Charlotte. Thanks so much. On to 8.3, the next item is from Finance and Corporate Services again regarding the municipal grant program policy and procedure number 40-51. Charlotte's going to provide an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to council. So this is the proposed new policy and procedure for the municipal grant program. We met with council on June 14th and reviewed the initial draft. And since that meeting, we have made a few changes, nothing significant. And I will just draw council's attention to a few of the items of note. So on page 3, with respect to the cap, so that's 3.4E, we cleaned up the language a little bit, removed the reference to the growth component of the road dedicated tax. So the 1% grant cap is just less the road dedicated tax, the tax levy less the road dedicated tax. So just a bit of cleanup on language there. On page 4, 4.1B, we tweaked the language a little bit there with respect to applicants being local, the service needing to be provided locally. Specifically, we're thinking of a service like search and rescue in that particular case. You'll note under 4.2G, as per our discussion at the Committee of the Whole, operational costs are considered an eligible service. On the next page, 4.4F, so organizational startup costs remain an ineligible service, but we removed operating and administrative expenses from ineligible costs. And that would be consistent with the earlier point. Page 6 of 9, under the review process, the old 6.5 was removed. A bit of a duplication there of something in an earlier point, so just tighten that up a little bit. On page 7, so this is probably the biggest formatting change. In 7.2 under evaluation criteria, the draft that we reviewed with council had a lot of detail underneath each of those evaluation points. So we've removed all that detail from the policy, and it will support the scoring matrix that council will receive when you review the applications. I felt it was more appropriate to have that as an attachment to the scoring matrix rather than have it embedded in the policy. Also, under guiding principles, number 8, there was some discussion about council strategic priorities should be consideration number 1. In reviewing the wording in 8.1, we're already referring to these guiding principles being aligned with council's priorities. So again, it was felt that including it as an item was probably a bit redundant. And finally, on page 9, 11.4 is new. And what 11.4 does is it makes any applicant who is subject to a long-term funding agreement required to submit reporting similar to anyone who's just on an annual grant cycle. And we've purposely left the long-term grant funding, completely at council's discretion. So as we move through the working with the new policy, when we come back to review it in 3 years, perhaps we add some additional criteria around that. But my suggestion is that we work with it this way. And then, as I said, it's at council's discretion, rather, whether a grant application should receive should be subject to a long-term funding agreement or on an annual cycle. And finally, in 11.4, it also refers to any funds unspent at the end of the 5 years or whatever the length of the long-term funding agreement is, should be returned to the city, just as is required of an annual grant recipient. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Can I get a motion that council approve the municipal grant program policy number 40-51? Councillor Ray, Councillor Brissett. Discussion. Councillor Stetsky, Councillor Ray.
Thank you. Great job on the policy. I want to go back to 4.1B for just a minute. So if we fund like a 3-day festival that happens just once a year, does that qualify? Or is that out when you talk about a year-long event?
Through your mayor to Councillor Stetsky, it does not exclude someone from doing a one-time event or a program or activity. They would still be eligible for that type of grant. What would be ineligible for this type of grant is it more of the in-kind or council contingency, and that's discussed in the council contingency policy. So if they miss the deadline and they have an event that they would like just fencing for, then that's more appropriate to be discussed through a different stream.
Okay, Councillor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really pleased to see us strengthening our governance policy structure. Relatively speaking, in terms of the city as a whole, of course, this is a relatively small piece of the pie, but I think it's very important for the community and our local nonprofits. So great to see us once again. Just we've gone from not having a policy to having a policy and having a really strong procedure on the operational side. So thank you for all the work that's gone into this. And, you know, I think it's going to put us in a great position to be really strategic, aligned with our strategic plan and making the best possible use of our resources in this area. And just as a reminder to folks in the community that as the city, we're just one part of a very complex ecosystem that supports nonprofit organizations. So we are definitely not the only game in town in terms of funding. And that there are resources such as the CBT Nonprofit Advisors Program that can work with nonprofits around financial sustainability. So I just wanted to share that for the community's consideration and for the nonprofits in our community. So thank you for all your work on this.
Thank you. Councillor Papa?
Yes, thank you. Good work, folks. Just penciled a few questions here. We have a definition for charity. So given the definition for charity, who have we given funds to previously that may now would not qualify? Is there anyone previously you can think of that would not meet that charity definition?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Popoff, I can't think of any off the
Okay,
top of my head.
Awesome, thank you. 3.4B, grants may be awarded with certain terms and conditions. State restrictions, if any, apply. An example of what a restriction might be? 3.4B.
No, I don't know. Your mayor through to Councillor Popoff. Sorry, it's hard sometimes. So what type of restrictions might apply are if council would like to see an event allow an open to the community structure as opposed to like a closed registration or ticketed, then they can include that in their acceptance.
Excellent, thank you. 4.1G, demonstrate the need for financial assistance and that funding from other sources have been applied for or explored. This sounds like an extremely large amount of staff resources that may go into this to explore this. I mean, at what level are we expending staff resources on this?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Popoff, are you referring to our staff or the applicant's staff?
I'm interpreting that to be they give you a response and do we further explore it?
My response to that would be we would exercise some professional judgment in terms of the scope of the application, in terms of what evidence may support that.
And thank you. And we have, from example of looking at applications where it's, they have none. And fully well, they've missed opportunities and they're just coming straight to city for our funding. So should we be putting some back pressure on them and say, look, go back and get some of your other potential funding sources as well?
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Popoff, what I would say in that case, because this is a new policy, so I think we would give some grace in the first year. I think we would have a discussion with the organization, remind them that this is a requirement under the policy and that we will advance their application for council's consideration, have a discussion of it around the council table, and then should council decide to approve the award, in the award letter, highlight again that in your next application, we expect to see this addressed.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything further? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That's carried. Molly, Charlotte, great job. Thank you very much. It's, kind of long overdue. And yeah, great work, Molly. I know how much time you spent on this, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item is from the CEO's office regarding new BCM resolutions for 2023. I'll call on Mark to provide a brief overview of the report, please.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Price. So this council has been involved in meeting with quite a number of provincial ministers on areas of public safety and housing development. And although we did have the meetings and left with notes and sent letters to follow up, council's expressed some desire to maybe make it a little more official, that have some of our asks go to UBCM for endorsement or consideration for endorsement there. So we've pulled together 4 resolutions for your consideration tonight. So the first one is to do with RCMP and in short, the Integrated Road Safety Unit Office on Theatre Road reports to Victoria, does traffic only. At times, our local detachment here with the general duty crime in Cranbrook becomes quite short-staffed, and right now there's no avenue for sharing of those resources. So we think sometimes given the shortfalls in staffing that not just Cranbrook encounters, when we were at the Southeast BC Commanders Conference in Kelowna, the mayor and I, we did hear that that's a fairly common thing, that municipal police forces are running very short. And so the traffic unit, if there was a way to share some of those resources, would be appreciated. So that's one. Number 2 is around Ministry of Transportation. So right now, when a municipality is working with a development community, and we know there's going to be a number of developments in an area, we can require pipes to be oversized so that you don't have to dig up the pipe for every subsequent development that comes in. You simply size it for full build out, and then you pay that difference. And then as the other developments come on stream, they all cover the latecomer fee to help pay that off. So a good system with Ministry of Transportation. Unfortunately, at the provincial level, once a traffic threshold is reached, then a intersection or roadway requirement is required, or upgrade is required, and then the full cost of that is borne by the developer that reached that trigger threshold. So, and there's no avenue to collect from later developers. So we're just saying perhaps the province could figure out something that looks like the municipal latecomer agreement to help speed along development, because as we're seeing development exposed to highway frontages, this is becoming a problem. The cost of an intersection upgrade on the highway can be substantial in the many, many millions of dollars. So number 3 is the province has been quite vocal about wanting to work with municipal governments and speed up development approval processes for housing development. And what we're finding is that our municipal processes take weeks. However, some of the provincial processes take months. So we're asking the province to consider putting more resources towards the areas that municipalities go to referrals on development, such as BC Hydro, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. As if those processes could be sped up, it would greatly benefit the housing output in the community. And lastly, affordable housing infrastructure upgrades. So as you know, we've been hearing that recently announced Housing Accelerator Fund basically covers some of this thinking. However, when you hear from other agencies, what you hear is a lot of the city needs to have land. So if there was a grant funding stream that was accessible by municipal governments that would allow infrastructures to be upgraded where there's going to be affordable housing projects through a grant program, rather than the cost of that upgrade becoming a barrier, that would help facilitate that, as well as potentially some funding for the purchase of land that we could then flip over back to BC Housing. So it would basically stay with the province. The money would come to us shortly, but really cities know where to develop inside the city better than anybody. So we're seeing that working with BC Housing, if we could facilitate that process a little more in detail and including the infrastructure upgrades, it would benefit the city. So those are the resolutions for council consideration. If council is okay with those, we send them to UBCM. We have until June 30th to get them in, and then they'll be there in the fall.
Thanks very much, Mark. Can I get a motion that council endorse the following resolutions for 2023? Cranbrook UBCM resolution number 1, RCMP traffic to crime. Cranbrook UBCM resolution number 2, MODI requirement highway upgrades. Cranbrook UBCM resolution number 3, development approvals. Cranbrook UBCM resolution number 4, affordable housing infrastructure upgrades. And further, that council direct staff to submit the council endorsed resolutions directly to the UBCM. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Popoff. Councillor Bissett. Discussion? Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. One quick question for the CEO here. The deadline for these applications is June 30th. Once it's approved, does that give us enough time to submit all the information?
The email and letter are pre-crafted and ready to go tomorrow morning.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Further? Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, important resolutions, Mark, and well thought out. Thank you.
Thanks. And I got to say thanks to the development and planning team for helping me flesh them out. I came with general ideas and they made it work.
Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is the one deadline to go directly to UBCM, but this does not have to be the last resolutions we as a city council do. We can also bring other resolutions back through to our AKBLG prior to convention in April. There's some rules. I think we have to submit them by February of 2024. So this is kick number one. We also have another opportunity January, February 2024 through AKBLG.
Thank you for that. Anything further? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next on the agenda are administrative updates. We have two updates tonight. The first is from Public Works regarding late spring, early summer maintenance. Can I get Tony Hughes to provide a brief overview of the admin update, please? See, you can't hear you, Tony. It's going to try again.
Maybe Mayor Price, we could just skip to Jason first and then we'll come back.
You bet. We'll go to the second update from Public Works, anticipated outdoor water restriction. I'll get Jason Perot to provide a brief overview of the update.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can everybody hear me?
You can, yes, Jason.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to give you a bit of an update of the conditions that we're seeing with our creek levels and reservoir levels. Right now, we are full. We are spilling at our reservoir, which is good. With the announcement from the province last week that we're in a stage 3 drought, of course, that's probably initiated some concern with some of the residents. We do notice that we are about a month ahead of schedule from previous years. So the creeks are still flowing well, just not for this time of year. Like I said, we're probably seeing about end of July flow levels right now. So I just wanted to update you just that we are aware of it. We will be monitoring quite regularly, and that we do anticipate that we will be going into possibly a stage 2 into a stage 3, depending on drought conditions. So, yeah, if you have any questions, I'll answer what I can.
Councillor Stetsky.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the benefit of the citizens who are watering their lawns and their flowers, what are the implications of stage 2 and stage 3 restrictions?
Well, the stage 2, so currently we are odd and even with the waterless Wednesday. Once we go to a stage 2, the odd and even days will change slightly. to accommodate less watering during those days. And then when we get into a stage 3, that's when we'll see more of the restrictions coming down. And then if we ever do have to get into a stage 4, hopefully not, that's when we'll see other businesses and stuff really cut down. So right now we are in a stage 1. So with about 3 days of watering, the stage 2 would be about 2 days of watering.
Thank you, Jason. I'm sure your department will be working very closely with our media people here so that we can keep the people up to date and informed before we make any decisions, as you have in the past. So that's been much appreciated. Anything further? Okay, thanks, Jason.
All right,
Great.
thanks.
Yep. Hey, Tony, you want to try again?
Hello, Mayor and Council.
Very good.
I had to change my technology. Yeah, so this is just a quick update on spring operations with the Parks Department. So the late spring, early summer has created a delay in completing the annual spring cleanup and maintenance activities by the city park staff. Wet soils, fertilizers, and the summer sun has also created the perfect recipe for plant growth, which includes weeds. To compound the challenge, the city's post-secondary employment program has seen a steady decline in the ability to attract post-secondary students. This has resulted in a decrease of over 4,400 man hours of it, which is equal to basically 8 staff for a period of 4 months. Students are very effective at maintaining garden beds, running weed trimmers, cleanup, mowing, as well as providing support for all the summer events. With the regular staff having to take up some additional duties of students, several other small works are delayed, such as weeding and large number of water main break repairs that require landscaping. Parks is also dealing with a very challenging weed in the Centennial Garden called field horsetail, which basically grows from an entrenched root system. Staff remove the plant but cannot remove the roots, and the plant sprouts within 1 to 2 weeks. And the commercially available products is ineffective on the plants. The only option is to remove the soil, which involves a complete renovation of the large garden. Through all this, our parks crew has provided support to the Spirit of the Rockies Festival and will be supporting Canada Day event. As always, the amazing parks crew is setting priorities and working through the various projects, flower beds, as well as turf maintenance program. So just a little bit update if you're wondering why things are a little bit delayed this year.
Yeah, I certainly see the challenges there, Tony, with those summer students. Councillor Stetsky.
So just curious about the issues with post-secondary employment, because the city pays pretty good wages. So is the problem that we aren't getting applicants coming forward, or did we not have the money to encourage them to come forward? And secondly, if people are interested in working for us for the summer, is there still an opportunity for them to apply?
So just speaking to some of the people in the circle I know, the student programs have become very competitive. There's a number of co-op programs, firefighting opportunities, and just a lot of private sector opportunities. As of now, we've used the funding to fill some seasonal type work just just hiring employees. So no, at this time we couldn't hire additional staff.
Anybody further? No. Thanks very much, Tony.
Thank you.
We'll move on to correspondence. We have 6 items of correspondence tonight. First piece of correspondence is from Melanie Sandberg from KISA Tournament Chair. Kootenai Soccer Association received June 14th, 2023 regarding waiving fees for their annual youth soccer tournament held June 17th and 18th, 2023. Staff noted the value of this request is $297.70, and I believe that would be coming out of council's contingency if we approve this. Is that correct? Yeah. The discussion. Councillor Peabody?
Thank you, Mayor. I almost called you your worship. Old habits.
Thank you very much for that.
I have no issue with waiving the fees for this, but I am just, I don't know, put off a little bit by the request and just how they're just saying we're a nonprofit, so waive this. Where I find we did something similar for the Sam Steele tournament, but they also commented on everything that they do for the city asset, which is the ball fields, right? Like they're raising money to do something with that money. So I just wonder for council contingency requests, should it be noted that at least put in a little bit of a sales pitch about why it's important that we support this group, as opposed to just saying, well, we're a nonprofit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's just a little put off. It's just like, this is what we are, help us, without any reason to do so.
Okay, Councillor Stetsky?
The tournament was 17th and 18th. We received it now, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, just an observation. I don't think any of our policies preclude us necessarily approving it, even though it's after the fact. It would if under the grant policy that we just approved, but maybe not with council contingency.
Thank you. Councillor Graham and Councillor Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm not interested in waiving the fee. The letter came in on the 14th. The tournament was on the 17th. I'm guessing the tournament went off without a hitch, even though we didn't waive the fee. So I am not in support.
Councillor Ray.
I'd be willing to put forward a motion for council's consideration that we approve this request to be paid out of the council contingency. But as we have conveyed with other similar requests, that because this is a regular event, that for the future, we would direct the organizers to our nonprofit application stream.
Yeah. Did you get that, Marnie? Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Papa, discussion. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. So it seems like we are getting a number of requests waiving fees for tournaments and special events like this. What is our criteria going forward? Are we going to just waive fees for any sort of tournament going forward? Is that council's idea? Or is it just how we interpret each one? Or are we just going to do it on a case-by-case basis?
Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, just as per our policy for council contingency, I think we're in a bit of a transition that we're making these approvals, but then for the future, referring folks to the nonprofit application stream. So I think we're in a little bit of a transition year in terms of familiarizing the community with the council contingency policy, which is, of course, new.
Further? Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, the June 14th and then June 17th and 18th, right? The dates, that's just an after the fact request, but certainly this isn't the first time we've had them from organizations in town, and we've kind of approved those over, in the past. So going forward, I certainly like Council Ray's suggestion, and I'm going to support this time with that caveat as well. Any further? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Graham is opposed, but the motion is carried. Thank you. The The next piece of correspondence is from Doug McPhee, Board Chair, School District 5, dated June 19, 2023, regarding a request for support for the continuation of Columbia Basin's Trust CBEAN program. Discussion. Receive for information. Yeah, okay, receive for information. Thank you. Next up is again from Doug McPhee, Board Chair, School District Number 5, dated June 19, 2023, regarding the request for support for the replacement of Mount Baker Secondary School. Again, up for discussion or yes, Councilor Bassett.
Mic's not turning on. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Peabody. I just wanted to add that a number of former school buildings are in use by other organizations now. If you think of the Tanaha building, even the manual training school that we have, plus the 10th Avenue School. And so I do think if and when Mount Baker, they look at building a new school, that I would hope that we could, that the school district would look at selling or repurposing Mount Baker School, because that is in a prime location. It's a large building. If you think of the building that is in Fernie now, that was the school and has luxury $1 million plus condos in it and a lovely spa, by the way. Yes, like Mount Baker has huge potential that way. And older buildings than that are still being well used in town. So I would, if we ever do put something in writing on this, I would like us to encourage them to repurpose that building and make it available for further development.
That's a good point, Councilor Bassett, and I almost get a sense of some enthusiasm within the community for maybe something like that going forward. Councilor Statsky.
I think it's important that we continue to support the replacement of Mount Baker School. So I'm certainly willing to make a motion that council send a letter of support requesting or supporting the school board's request to replace Mount Baker Secondary School. I'm putting that forward as a motion.
Okay, but they've got a motion. They're going to send us a letter asking for support. Do you want to just kind of supersede that? Isn't that what this was? It was for a motion that they're going to send a letter, send a request to the city for a letter coming from them.
Well, I can wait for the letter,
Okay.
but you know how I'll vote when it comes.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah. Marty? I'm on the wrong one here, maybe. Okay, yep. So you've got the motion from. Okay, seconder, Councilor Ray. Discussion, Councilor Bassett.
I'm not sure, well, replacement and repurposing, I would like that included because I do think there's enormous potential for that. And that wasn't discussed when we met with the school board.
No. So do the motion then right now. It's for the new school, but and consideration for repurposing, something along that line?
Yes.
That they do consider it. We can't kind of.
Yeah.
Is that
Consider
fair?
it
Councilor Prustesky, would you?
I consider it a friendly amendment, absolutely.
There, a seconder, are you okay with that? Good. We're good? Any further questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. We have another piece of correspondence from Doug McPhee, Board Chair, School District 5, dated June 19, 2023. What did I do here? Hang on. regarding a request for support for the replacement of Mount Baker School. 12.3 and 12.4. Let me have a peek here. Just give me 1 minute. We've got the original. 12.3. No, oh, that
This is it.
is just 12.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a duplicate here.
That's 12.
Yeah.
I think we're.
Oh, it's for the Knights Hall. We're on the Knights Hall now.
Yes.
Hmm. So it's correspondence regarding the Knights Hall properties, is that correct? Okay, yeah, I don't have that in front of me, so that's a bit of a misprint here. I'm fine. Everybody received that for information then? That's good. Thank you. Uh, 12.5, the next piece of correspondence from Rob Gay. Board Chair, Regional District of East Kootenay, received June 21, 2023, regarding 2023-2024 resident-directed grants funding approved. Discussion? Received for information? Thank you. 12.6, the last piece of correspondence is from the city to the Board of Education Trustees, School District Number 5, dated June 26, 2023, regarding a draft letter of support to create childcare spaces in Cranbrook. We have a recommendation for this correspondence. I'll read the recommendation and we'll have some discussion. Excuse me, can I get a motion that council receive the correspondence to Board of Education Trustees, School District Number 5, dated June 26, 2023, regarding a draft letter of support creating childcare spaces in Cranbrook, and further, that council approve the release of the draft letter of support as presented. Mover, Councillor Blissett, Councillor Ray, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And that brings us to the conclusion of the reports. We'll go through the councilors' reports and inquiries. We'll start with Councillor Stetsky tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. A number of items. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of attending the Cranbrook Bandits baseball game against the alumni. And just for information, if you like good baseball, they're continuing to play until July 9th. The Cranbrook Bandits, you can go to their website. One of the things that was quite interesting is that one of the pitchers for the alumni was Ali Schroeder. And she was a former Bandit, but she's the first woman to suit up in the Canadian College Baseball Conference ever, playing for Vancouver Island University Mariners. And she's also played with Canada's national women's team. She's from Fruitvale initially, a pitcher. Favorite pitches are a changeup and a two-seam fastball. And I have to admit, I was envious of her arm when she was on the mound. But quite nice to have a former Bandit as the first woman to sit on the Canadian College Baseball Conference. I also attended the Cranbrook Social Planning AGM and Committee. I am council representative to the Social Planning Committee. At that meeting, I did talk a bit about our pending policy on dealing with homelessness, and rightly or wrongly had said that council was not going to go to the daily moving of tents, hence my vote when the bylaw came before council. I do feel we need to represent the groups that we are assigned to. National Indigenous Peoples Day, I'll leave it to Councillor Ray to talk about that, but she was a great representative for the city on that particular day. And I think, the youth ambassadors, as the mayor mentioned, that was a really special evening, a very, very talented group of 8 people. I couldn't have picked the winners out of that group, but we got 2 very, very good representatives that'll do Cranbrook proud over the next year. So congratulations to them.
Thank you. Councillor Peabody.
Thank you, Mayor. two things to bring up tonight. First thing, I've witnessed a few close calls of our public transit system, our buses, crossing Baker Street, basically coming down 11th, heading towards Cooney Street North. And in that intersection, there's two lanes on the right-hand side that both go straight through that intersection. And the buses are always on the inside lane. I don't know if people are just perceiving that the bus is going to turn there. So I've witnessed a few times where cars turn left, cutting the bus off, and the bus on 2 occasions has had to slam on the brakes quite quickly. I don't know if it's just the perception of drivers seeing the bus in the right lane as opposed to the left, and that's why they're being cut off, or maybe it's just a non-issue and it's just coincidental. I've seen it happen twice. But I just wonder if it's worth inquiring with our transit provider if that is an issue, that intersection, if it's something that is happening frequently, and then maybe is the solution to be in the left lane as opposed to the right lane when they're driving towards Kootenay Street. It might be a non-issue, but better safe than sorry. Second thing, council approved a much needed increase in development for that place on, or that property on First Avenue. And it looks like in the staff report that there will be a parking variance coming down the road that may need to be approved. I know council has approved this twice, both in Rocky View Place and Chief Agnes McCoy. I'm just wondering if staff can just maybe come back to council before this variance is approved, just to see, just for information, whether or not reducing the amount of available parking spaces is causing any issues in those neighborhoods, and whether or not there is actually any concerns. I know in the past we've been making our decisions based on how it's basically they're being approved in other cities and other municipalities. I just want to make sure that before we continue on with this practice, that we make sure that it is actually the best practice for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Peabody. Councillor Bissett.
Thank you. A couple of things. First of all, Councillor Popoff and I were in Vancouver last week to attend the Gathering Hope Positive Impacts in Community Overdose Response. And it was a great conference and an awful lot of learning came out of that. Started off with a beautiful presentation by the Squamish First Nation. And they were talking, they did quite a lengthy presentation and the importance of culture and in helping their people, no matter what peoples across this country, actually, we all need culture. And in fact, yeah, it was a beautiful ceremony, and it was interesting because I drove across to Vancouver, and you see the variation in the landscape between here and Vancouver. And of course, that's reflected in the Indigenous people because they're so tied to the land. And when I spoke to Len Pierre, who was speaking there, he said, yes, it's in every aspect of their lives, that connection to the land. So of course, there's big variation amongst the peoples between living in the coastal climate versus in the interior. So that was interesting. One of the things that, as we were driving there, we stopped in the City of Hope, and we were charging there, and there were public washrooms. And one of the things I noted was that the outside door to the washroom was kept chained open during all the hours of operation. And I thought, well, what a great way to reduce vandalism, because we often know public washrooms can be, scary places at times, but with that outside door being chained open during operating hours, I thought that really helped. I just mentioned that because I thought maybe we could look at that in our public washrooms. I just throw that out there. And then also, there was a report from the fire chief from Surrey who was talking about what he called the second responder program. And so in that case, you know, there are first responders. And so they're going to a number of overdose situations and medical situations involving drugs, because we were talking about drug use. And so what they were saying is then they were following up with a community support worker, with people, harm reduction people, within 72 hours of the incident, and asking those people that involved, do they need any more help? Are they willing to work with us? And about 50% of the time, the people said yes. And so they thought that was pretty they're pretty successful. So I didn't know if we wanted to look at that. It's something to consider. Certainly Surrey is doing it. It might be something to look at, just to recruit. The idea was to reduce the number of calls for repeat overdoses, and especially to reduce the number of that, you know, could be successful overdoses, right? So in order to do the harm reduction. It was a great conference and an awful lot of learning, and I will make the publications we have available to everybody here. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think this is our first council meeting since the Spirit of the Rockies Festival, just in case I've totally lost track of time, which is completely possible. So I just wanted to say thank you to the organizers, all the volunteers, the sponsors, and everyone who participated in any or all of the Spirit of the Rockies Festival activities. My big contribution was to attend pancake breakfasts, which I did happily, the East Kootenay Friends of Children breakfast and the Tunaha Nation Council breakfast. I had a longstanding commitment that I was not able to be here for the whole weekend, and I will do my very best to be here next year for the whole weekend, but just wanted to thank all those folks who made this, again, such a successful weekend. Last week, I had the pleasure of having a tour of Public Works with Tony Haytu. So thanks very much to Tony for increasing my knowledge around the many ways that Public Works contributes to our community and to our city. And it was a pleasure to meet everybody who happened to be on site at the time doing their work and get a better understanding of what they do. And again, just thanks to everybody in Public Works for all they do for our community. And then last but not least, as Councillor Stetsky mentioned, it was my pleasure, along with Councillor Stetsky, to attend the National Indigenous Peoples Day celebration here in Rotary Park. So that was on June 20th. It was an honor for me to be here in a Kiskakliet, in Amakas Tunaha, to share greetings on behalf of the city. And thank you very much to Tunaha Kinbasket Child and Family Services and the Rocky Mountain Métis Association for organizing that event.
Thank you. Councillor Popoff.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So yes, like Councillor Doucette mentioned about our trip down to Vancouver for the Local Leadership United meetings. Again, it was on the opioid crisis, why people are overdosing, why people are dying. We had the pleasure of meeting and listening to Dr. Bonnie Henry. And as you know, from all of the COVID interviews, she, in a calm way, makes you calm yourself while listening to all the horrific facts about what's really going on. It dispelled a number of myths that I think I had, and it was very good to listen to Dr. Bonnie Henry. You know, why people are overdosing, who they are, where the overdosing was a real important issue, as Councillor Doucette was saying. Separate from that, we had some lived experiences from those people that still do drugs and or are in recovery mode from drugs, again, breaking the myths. And one of the big things that both the people with the lived experience and also the organizers of this event was talking about was, and Dr. Bonnie Henry, was treat drugs, and this is one of the things that blew my mind away, treat drugs just like you do alcohol. Safe, regulated supply. If you think about it, I mean, if it wasn't for the safe, regulated supply we have with our wine and beverages, and it went underground, we too might be dealing with toxic supply of our beverages. So think of it in that way, and that's one of the lessons learned that they're talking about. Also, two bylaw communities from Prince George and Kelowna presented about how they generally are dealing with social issues and in particular the opioid issue. So reach out to both Prince George and Kelowna for those if we're inclined. It was, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about opioid crisis, but there was a lot of myths that blew up on me, and I found it very, very enlightening. So great lessons learned.
Thank you. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it was great to be involved in the Spirit of the Rockies Festival and all the activities that were taking place over the weekend. It was great to see a lot of people out and just mulling around, whether you're at the central grounds or at the Strongman or at the parade route. So yeah, it was great to be involved in that, and nice to see people out, and the weather held out pretty good for us.
Thank you. Yeah, myself, I had the pleasure of attending the Youth Ambassador Showcase on the Friday night and attending the banquet and ball on the Saturday night. So that was a very nice weekend. The strategic plan, I had the opportunity to go out and promote speak to the strategic planning with the chamber executive. Was supported by Mike Matika, so thank you for that, Mike. And then following up on that one, I met with the Sunrise Rotary and did a little bit of an overview presentation to them. I guess the only other thing I've got, and it just keeps coming up again tonight, the parking requirements for these new developments. We've got a bylaw that states too, and I would say that just about every development that comes to us now is asking for a variance. When you look at washrooms and parking and things like this, it's covered off in the building code. I'm just wondering if we shouldn't leave that up to the design professionals that are designing these developments to determine the adequate level of parking. I mean, because what happens is as soon as it goes to the variant, we provide the amendment. We're the bad guys, and it just haunts us. And then people it's just constant from that day on. You contravened your bylaw. Now look, you contravened your bylaw, and in a sense they are right. But I just look at the building code since, I don't know, it's been a number of years since they've gone to from a prescriptive to an objective based code. Well, I think this certainly fits well with an objective based determination on how many parking spots. So I'm just wondering, maybe council or Mark, maybe I don't want staff to spend a lot of time on that, but just see what it would take for us to amend our bylaw, that we could put some kind of a provision in where the design professional would determine the parking. Yeah. And that's all I've got. So with that, could I get a motion to adjourn? Councillor Bissett, Councillor Peabody, all in favor? Adjourn.